Hi everyone, I hope you're all keeping well. So we are on to a new month. November has arrived, as has unfortunately another podcast. I have to say this is the most boring one yet. I really struggled to continue listening to it, to be able to take notes, to turn this into a video. This one was all to do with good mum, bad mum. The fact that Meghan mentions the fact that she's a mum and a parent 12 times in the first 3 minutes kind of gives you the gist of where this is going to go. Meghan is a mum, didn't you know? Oh, if you didn't know, you definitely know after the first 3 minutes. Honestly, I'm not joking when I say this. I was so bored that I was flicking through Twitter. What made me laugh was I came across Jesus Enrique Rosas, who is the body language guy. I think he must have been listening to it at the same time I was, because he was just like, she should win an award for this being the worst one yet. And I was like, yep, I'm totally with you on this one. She is the most boring person in the world. Everything she does is so set up and contrived. This time, instead of Harry rearing his head at the exact moment that Meghan happens to be recording, this time we have Doria, of course, because the podcast is to do with being a mum. But before I get too engrossed in what was said, let's have a spoonful of sugar to help the podcast go down, because you're going to need it on this one. Last night we had the rather dashing and handsome Prince of Wales, Prince William, arrive at the 10th Annual Tusk Conservation Awards. He wasn't the only member of the royal family to be there looking rather gorgeous. We had Prince William's cousin, who is Princess Anne's eldest child, Peter Phillips, turned up. Recently, I believe he's divorced now from Autumn Phillips. I don't think he'll be single for very long, ladies. He looks absolutely lovely, I have to say. Yes, I'm a married woman, but I can window shop occasionally. And I have to say, they look rather dashing, don't they? They make quite the twosome. As for the Tusk Awards, this is something that is incredibly close to Prince William's heart. He's been very impassioned about this. He campaigned for years to get the ivory trade completely banned in the UK. This actually did happen in 2018, although alarmingly, I read this morning that they've only started enforcing it June this year, which I find absolutely ridiculous. But that's a different story. But yeah, so William has done a lot of stuff for conservation in Africa. The awards themselves are about celebrating African-based conservation leaders and wildlife rangers for the work that they have done with the wildlife, with local communities, and just generally safeguarding for future generations. They recognise the unsung heroes who dedicate and risk their lives trying to preserve wildlife day and night on the front lines across all the different conservation areas in Africa. I was hoping that we'd see Princess Catherine, although seeing Peter Phillips in a suit took the edge off a little bit for me. But we are expected to see the Prince and Princess of Wales over the coming next few days. There's lots of stuff going on with rugby, so I will be reporting as of when they appear in the news. So let's get on to this really exciting podcast where the first 3 minutes, when Meghan stops obviously talking about the fact that she's a mum, yes, we get it, you're a mum of 2 children, she goes excitedly on to talk about how she met with a friend in the summer who she hadn't been able to spend time with, and they were drinking wine and playing with their children in the pool, and then Meghan threw in some pool floats. The inflatable pizza slice proved to be a big hit. The one without the pepperoni was cheaper than the one with pepperoni. Then Meghan feels the need to explain further to the listener like we're all stupid. Obviously, I'm talking about the inflatable pool float. Well, obviously, you gave that away by starting off the sentence saying the pizza pool float was a big hit. Honestly, it's like she thinks that she's doing a reading with Mother, that we're all 4-year-olds sitting there going, a pizza? Did it have pepperoni? Did it? But Meghan, pulling herself back down to being the serious woman that she is and the start of this podcast, then turns around and says, but all this aside, this wasn't our day of being wives and mums, all perfectly coiffed with updos and pearls and demure smiles. What decade is this woman living in, that this was their day to relax and to splash around in the swimming pool, not to be coiffed wearing pearls with demure smiles? Has she been watching too much of Stepford Wives? Is that a swipe maybe at the royal ladies? Or is Meghan just talking about this photo shoot that she did for The Cut, where she had her coiffed updo and the pearls round her neck, playing the Princess of Montecito? It's very bizarre, again, the way that she talks about things like this. As I said, it's like she's she's in a different decade, or might depend what film she's apparently watched on Netflix that very morning. So the reason for this really boring start to the podcast was to do with the build-up of her perfect and wonderful friendship with none other than the First Lady of Canada. I've got a friend in Canada, and she was like, she's definitely not the First Lady, she is the Prime Minister's wife. But Meghan likes to big up her friends and blow some smoke up her butt. We had something similar recently with Boris Johnson. They were trying to call Carrie, his wife, the First Lady. It's like, she's not the First Lady. We do not have First Ladies. So the reason why Sophie, a fellow mum, yes, we're back to the mum, we're mums. She's a mum, I'm a mum. Did you know that I'm a mum? Meghan goes on to say, it's so much work being a mum when you are just trying to be a conscious parent to raising good, kind human beings. I have to say, yes, I do believe that if you are a mother, it does help to stay conscious. As for raising your children to be good and kind, children generally have to see that sort of behaviour from their parents, and considering that Meghan and Harry are known for terrorising their staff, making them burst into tears on a regular basis, talking down to people and just generally treating their family absolutely appallingly, I can't imagine that the children are going to pick up good habits, but maybe one day that might be the karma that Harry and Meghan deserve when the children start treating them how they have treated theirs. Now, naturally, Meghan straight away, we hear a few moments of Sophie, and then it's Meghan over talking Sophie and just talking about Sophie like Sophie's not actually there. It's very bizarre that she does this with her guests, although to be honest with you, this one was so boring I didn't care at this point. At this point I was flicking to the transcript to see if reading it would be any better than listening to it, and no, it wasn't. At least listening to it I had to stay fairly awake and focused. So Meghan is trying to get some sisterly camaraderie going on, talking about how hard it is being a mother. And she goes on to say, it's about the pressures of having a family, a home, a public life, whilst holding up the mantle of being a parent and spouse. That's a full plate, she says. Tell that to a single mother that is working 3 jobs, or a single father, to be fair. Meghan seems to forget that there are lots of single dads out there as well, raising their children, but are working 3 jobs just to keep food on the table or going without themselves. But again, here she is talking to another multi-millionaire rich woman who doesn't have to work, who no doubt has a team of nannies, gardeners, chefs, personal assistants, aides, business managers, drivers, personal shoppers, private jets at their disposal. But sure, let's talk about their full plates. It's not something that, unless, well, you're possibly one of their friends, you're really going to resonate with, as Meghan likes to point out. After 9 minutes of this is when you get the I'm Meghan and this is archetypes. 9 minutes? 9 minutes? Is that all I've done? We're digging into the role women play along the home front as wives, mums, partners, caretakers, and how we break out the limiting versions that society has carved out for us and settle into our layered, complex, and fullest version of our own troops. I had to read that twice in the transcript, and I'm still not quite sure what she's on about. 10 minutes and 30 seconds in, we hear a name dropped that was actually dropped not that long ago on another podcast, and that is Pamela Adlon. Now, for those of you that are not listening to the podcast or haven't watched my video before, trust me at this, she brought up Pamela recently when Meghan was talking about how she was made to feel welcome when she went to Gloria Steinem's birthday party, or Glow, as Meghan likes to call her. And I swear the next 2 minutes of this podcast was Meghan saying the exact same story of what happened when she went to Gloria Steinem's birthday. Bearing in mind she did this, I think, 1 or 2 podcasts ago, so she's obviously clearly running out of material so badly. 2 minutes of telling the exact same story. So I'm going to do you a favour here and go blah, 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 boring, blah, snore. Skip. Let's go to 18 minutes and jump right in here. This part, Meghan starts talking about how hard it was to do the citizenship, the UK citizenship exam. Now, Meghan never actually sat the exam. She was supposed to study for the exam. Meghan was not in the UK long enough to even have been able to apply for UK citizenship. But the whole story is she is telling her guest how hard it was to understand any of the questions. Well, yes, this is a citizenship exam. You're not meant to come to the UK and automatically know it. It's meant to prove the fact that you've taken the time to learn about the country that you now wish to be part of, which Meghan seems to have lost the ability to use Google, even though she managed to deep search her husband, his family, his mother, even to the finest details of reportedly on their first date, she wore Princess Diana's favourite perfume just to mess with Harry's little noggin. Now, bear in mind, Meghan kept telling us how super intelligent she is. She plays Scrabble with a timer, remember? Now, Meghan makes a point of trying to prove how hard the questions were that she asked her English husband, Harry, who just went, "No idea." Well, of course, Harry doesn't have an idea. I would say that the curriculum and just generally academics wasn't his strongest point, so no great big shocker. Plus the fact Meghan has made him sound a bit like a dimwit there, and he doesn't need any help in that area, does he? Now, we naturally come down to a bit of the cringe-worthy stuff. Just as it happens, this random day that Meghan happens to be doing a podcast about mums, Doria, her mother, just calls at the exact same time. Can you believe it? And it started off again, it was just cringe. "Hi, Mommy," she goes in a really sickly sweet voice, and her mother answers. And I was just like, "Hi, Mommy." I can feel myself doing it. I do wind my mum up sometimes, and I'm like, when I want something, "Mummy." But I'm playing. But the way Meghan did it is she wasn't playing. This was like she's trying to pretend this is how she speaks to her mother, being a 41-year-old to 45-year-old woman. "Hi, Mummy." Blah. She reminded me of Carolyn in Poltergeist. It was just weird and completely fake. But Meghan brought her mother into it so she could talk about how she appreciates how her mother provided for her and everything that she did for her. And at that moment, I heard Thomas Markle's heart in Mexico shatter yet again. Doria was completely absent for 10 years in Meghan's life growing up. Thomas Markle paid for absolutely everything. He paid for all her acting and her dance classes, trips for her to go across to Europe, go away on holidays with her friends, her college tuition fees, to join her sorority, her car, her rent. He turned her apartment bathroom into a photography studio because at one point she said, "Daddy, that's what I want." He paid for everything for her, and then she has completely cut him off and ghosted him, and now she's writing him out of her history completely. Meghan says to Sophie that she wants her children to be brought up kind. She ghosted her father. Ghosting, as far as I'm concerned, is cruel. It's a really twisted way to decide that you're not speaking to someone, to completely ignore them. To ignore their phone calls, to never have a conversation, to never ever speak to them ever again. It takes an especially cold heart to be able to do that, especially when the only thing that Thomas Markle did was set up paparazzi shots. And in the grander scheme of things, considering that Meghan has always done this herself, has actually worked with the photographer that took the photographs, Jeff Rayner, the one that destroyed her wedding plans and everything. She's worked with him, with Harry, since they've moved to LA, and she's cut her father off. Recently, we had Meghan doing the pap stroll, didn't we, around shops. We've seen her using her own child, Archie, for set-up pap strolls, yet she's cut off her father, completely abandoned him, and has cut him off from his grandchildren and everything, all because of those photographs. As I said, it takes an especially unkind, cruel, and I would say mercenary heart to be able to do that, especially with the number of interviews where Thomas has just begged and pleaded. He just wants to speak to her. Now, as for the interviews, could Thomas have handled it differently? Maybe, but then I've never been in that position, and who are we to judge? He was so desperate to speak to her. All he can see is his photographs of his daughter giving interviews and talking in the media, so he knows if he puts it in the media, she'll actually see it. She has completely cut him off, and now she's talking about that it was her mother that raised her. To completely rewrite over her history and everything that he's done for her, it's just like she's cruelly taunting him and rubbing it in his face. face all over again. He's sick. He's very recently recovered from a pretty serious stroke. And here she is just pretending now that her mother raised her and gave her everything. Firstly, she lied when she was part of the royal family to say that she had to subsidise her scholarships and tuition fees with part-time jobs, which turned out to be complete lies. She says how her mum supported her, took care of her and the house and herself, and how she juggled so much. Well, it wasn't that long ago that Meghan was writing in the blog saying my dad used to work long days on sets, and then he would take her straight to tap and dance classes, and then take her to dinner at Frank and Russo's. You know, there's so many stories that, again, like where Harry's messing up, these are Meghan's own words that she wrote in her blog and in interviews. For Meghan to say that the amount women carry, what they navigate, is immense and often the most thankless, I'm sure her father can truly resonate with those words, but it's just absolutely hypocritical that it's coming from her mouth. Now, Thomas isn't the only one to have his parental duties completely washed over. Now we have Meghan talking about her whirlwind morning that she does every single day. For me, you know, I get both monitors and it's always up with Lily. Then half hour later, Archie's downstairs. I start doing his lunchbox before he's up, while I have her getting her a little nibble. My husband helps me get him downstairs. I make breakfast for all three of them. It's very important to me. For me, it just feels the greatest way to start the morning. And then it's like I feed all three dogs and then get Archie out for school. It feels like a whirlwind. Okay, so Sophie on Twitter has reshared something which, well, this article was only July of this year. Harry is up at the crack of dawn getting the kids fed, washed and dressed. He then chauffeurs Meghan to meetings and then rushes back as he doesn't like leaving them with the nannies. So Harry is now demoted to Meghan makes breakfast for him and she does everything. She is a whirlwind. Meghan is a super mum deserving of praise. That's what this podcast is all about. Now, one thing I will say, and I'm going to end the video here, there's so many things that I believe Meghan has a misprinted dictionary. First up, we've got Meghan still confused over archetypes and stereotypes. Then we've got the fact she seems very confused of it's mummy that raised me. No, Meghan, the word is daddy raised me. And in this case, Meghan goes on and on and on, and she talks about being a whirlwind in the mornings. I personally think she means the word windbag, because if you look up definition of a windbag, that is someone that talks at great length but offers nothing of value. Basically, they talk an awful lot but say absolutely nothing of interest. So, as I said, this one is going to be hard to top as the most boring one, but I'm sure we've got another podcast coming next week. So anyway, guys, that's it for me on this video, and I will be back with you very soon. So take care for now. Bye.
If you would like to buy me a coffee, please go to my About page and click the link. Love, Taz.